Paul George calls podcasting therapeutic. And somebody commented on my YouTube channel today and said, you need new content. All you talk about is Paul George. And I replied, that's because it's so much fun. I used to get the same thing from Ben Simmons stands. I used to get the same thing from James Harden stands. I'm in the drama business, and Paul George, he just delivers the drama, dude. Like it writes itself. It's very simple. I wake up in the morning, Paul George said something dumb, I make a video on it. Anyway, Paul George, had the podcast, right? The Sixers were terrible. He was terrible, maybe one of the biggest disappointments in the history of signing a player for this team. And so it looked weird with, just absolutely being looking washed on the court and then going and doing a podcast talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder or interviewing Reggie Jackson or whatever. And so once the 76ers, for whatever reason, the 76ers, as they got closer to being out of contention, I mean, most of the fan base knew that this team was cooked. And Paul George said, I'm going to stop the podcast to focus on winning a championship. And everybody was like, what is he talking about? And now we have a new quote on Paul George about kind of why he stopped the podcast and what he thinks about it. And he said, podcasting is therapeutic. When I started my podcast, I knew there was going to be some backlash. I knew there were going to be people that had things to say about it. He's an athlete. He should be in the gym 24 hours out of the day. But to be honest, it's therapeutic. It's a chance for me to talk about things that go on in sports that I probably otherwise would hold on to. When I started my podcast, I knew there was going to be some backlash. He's an athlete. He should be in the gym 24 hours out of the day. See, here's the problem everybody had with it, Paul George. You stunk on the court, which gives people the impression that you're not in the gym at all. You see what I'm saying? So then it looks like you're not working on your craft, and then you're going and spending time doing a podcast. See? If you come out and you're playing well, and you look like you're in really good shape and ready to go for the season, and you look like the best version of yourself, and then you're doing a podcast, nobody's going to say anything because they're not ready to get you have a negative take right away. When you look completely washed, everybody already wants to come at you. In Philly, anyway. You got away with it in L.A. because it's L.A. Plus, it was the Clippers. That was probably the main problem with Paul George starting a podcast. He was playing for L.A.'s B team. Nobody gives a fuck. You see what I'm saying? So you can start a podcast. Nobody cares. You came to Philly just for the money. Everybody knows it. And you tried to still do this podcast thing, and it's just not going to fly in Philly, dude. These fans are ruthless. These fans take this shit seriously. It's just flat out the wrong city to sign a max contract, stink up the joint, and then have a dumbass podcast going at the same time. Now, is it fair that certain players have a podcast and get attacked, and certain players have a podcast and don't get attacked? I think it's the expectations that come along with signing a max contract. You know what I mean? Because people will be like, Pat Bev has a podcast and he played in Philly and nobody cared that Patrick Beverly, was playing and was still doing a podcast. It's Patrick Beverly, bro. You know what I mean? Of course nobody cares because he wasn't on a max contract. The players, the fans didn't have an expectation of Patrick Beverly to be one of the players that's leading the team. When you're just a veteran, halfway retired, minimum signing, and you have a podcast, nobody's going to give a shit. If Kyle Lowry had a podcast right now, would anybody care? No. Sixers fans wouldn't be coming at because You know what I mean? You sign a max contract, the expectations that come along with it just is what it is. You know, that's like a celebrity hip-hop artist complaining that he can't go anywhere without people wanting to sign autographs. That's the life you chose when you decided to do that. You signed the max. Responsibilities come along with that. People aren't going to like the fact that you have a podcast when you're stinking up the joint. Also, it's therapeutic. It's a chance for me to talk about things that go on in sports that this doesn't make any sense to me. What do you mean? You can't just talk about things with your friends without recording it into a microphone? You know what I mean? I talk about things with my friends all the time that's not recorded into a microphone. That doesn't make any sense. It's a chance for me to talk about things that go on in sports that I probably otherwise would hold on to. This is bullshit. Basically, what this is. This is bullshit. This is a lie. This paragraph right here is a lie. The truth is, Paul George wants to be a podcaster after he's retired. That's his plan. He signs with the Sixers. It doesn't go well. Sixers fans tanked his podcast, bro. Go look at the dislike ratio on that show. Every single video had like thousands of dislikes, which hurts the product and the algorithm. That's why he stopped it. And then he came, I stopped doing it because I wanted to focus on winning a championship. Well, no, you didn't. You stopped it because somebody who runs the business or helps you run the business said, hey, you got to stop. This is hurting the podcast and the show, being on the Sixers and all this, you know, and maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe Paul George will request a trade just to try to save his podcast. Maybe. What did this say, man? Subscribe now. Oh, subscribers only? Yeah, no thanks. Oh, I guess I got it anyway. Is this? No, that's a different story about a podcaster. Here's Micah Parsons. Yeah, this whole article is about athletes doing podcasts and how fans don't like it. Yeah, it is what it is. You signed up for it. What do you guys think? Will Paul George, let me ask you a question. Will Paul George relaunch the podcast while being a 76ers fan? Or has he stopped podcasting until he's no longer a Philadelphia 76er? Because Philadelphia fans absolutely attacked the comments of every single podcast episode that he put out. Is this a business decision to say, hey, I'm not going to try to run get a podcast off the ground or run a podcast business while I'm in Philly because they're doing this to the algorithm? When can the Sixers trade PG? This offseason. Za said the Hawks want him. Yeah, the rumor, there was that at the trade deadline that the Hawks wanted him. We thought Daryl Morey was going to jump on that. It's Daryl Morey, man. What can you do? We watched it for how many years with Tobias Harris? We're like, yes, there's a team wants to take that contract. Trade him. And he didn't do it. And yeah, he didn't do it with Paul George at the trade deadline. Will he do it this offseason? I don't know. Maybe Paul George requests a trade this offseason. Or maybe, what's the likelihood of this? In the chat, what's the likelihood of this? Paul George, because I do want to be fair. Paul George looked pretty good in those 1.5 preseason games before he hyperextended the knee the first time. Remember that? That first preseason game, he looked really good. He looked really mobile. He looked really quick with the ball in his hands. He looked really good that first preseason game. I think I had a video about the Paul George effect. I jinxed him. Of course I did. And then he hyperextends the knee. And then he was out. And then he missed the first couple games of the season. Then he comes back, hyperextends the knee again. And then he looks washed the whole season. What's the likelihood of this? Paul George was actually not 100% the whole season. Y'all are going to start throwing tomatoes at me when I finish this sentence. Paul George was not healthy this whole season. And next season, he actually comes back healthy and plays like the player we thought we were getting when we signed him. One being very unlikely, 10 being very likely in the chat. You're too smart to believe that. Nope. We got a -10. Not a chance at all? You better drop some tomatoes in the chat. One crazy talk, Shane. What's up, Shane? Bucket Getter, what's up? What's up, everybody? Good to see you guys back, man. We got a bunch of ones in the chat. We got a 3, we got a 4, a 5. I think a 5 is probably as high as we're going to get on that one. Likelihood that the Sixers 25-26 season has Embiid, Paul, PJ? Did you mean PG? I don't think you meant PJ, right? Embiid, PG, Morey, and Nurse on the team. What's the likelihood the Sixers have next season have Embiid, Morey, Nurse, and Paul George? That's a great question. That is a great question. Again, I think that Josh Harris is going to make a business decision. I've said this a million times, but I'll say it every single show. I think Josh Harris is going to make a business decision because there's nothing left to sell to this fan base, right? The last couple years I felt like was the last straw, and they kept pulling something late. You know, right before the season starts, something, fire the coach. Okay, we got a new coach. You know what I mean? Next season, okay, we traded James Harden or whatever. You know, okay, Joel Embiid's healthy now, right? Joel Embiid every offseason. Joel Embiid lost weight. I fucking hate when people say that. Every year, Joel Embiid lost 30 pounds. Every year he lost 30 pounds. Still, you know, comes in about 280 every single year. But every offseason, they've pulled off something to be able to sell this upcoming season. I am not seeing a single thing that this organization can use to sell to the fan base for this upcoming season without changing something major. So I think it has to be done. I think Josh Harris is going to make a business decision because the fan base is so desperate for at least something different. I do not think you can come back and say, okay, we're bringing back Daryl Morey. We're bringing back Nick Nurse. We're bringing back Joel Embiid on probably another ramp-up plan to hope that we can manage knee swelling the whole season. And we're bringing back Paul George. Nobody, dude, you're looking at $1 ticket sales right now. You're going to start the season with $1 ticket sales if you try to do that. So I think the likelihood of all 4 of those guys being back is a 1.